AwardsWatch.com. This is Ryan McQuade, the executive editor here at AwardsWatch, and we are doing a very special episode of the AwardsWatch Podcast, episode 200, live here at the Telluride Film Festival. Joining me today is our editor-in-chief, Erik Anderson. Bet you didn't know it was 200, did you, boss?
It's 200, just like me.
We're also joined by Sophia Ciminello.
Hi, guys.
And she was on our show 2 weeks ago, Christina Jeurling Birro.
I'm so honored to be here for 200.
Yeah.
And also to be here with you guys at Telluride. You kind of adopted me into this little family, so I'm so happy. Thank you so much.
It's been the four of us up here in the mountains of Telluride for the last, 5 days or so? Mm-hmm. And it has been nothing but a lot of laughs and late nights, no food, charcuterie boards.
Lots of crying.
Lots of crying.
Oh my God.
Lots of jokes about the sea. And of course, lots of movies. So, at the same time, I want to let everybody know that we are recording this in a room together on a mic. So it's not our usual quality of podcasting sound that we usually do, but we all wanted to be here in the same room together to talk about these extraordinary films that the 50th Telluride Film Festival, 200th episode, talking about the 50th Telluride Film Festival, and what a year it was. There were so many great films here. But I wanted to go back to our conversation we had 2 weeks ago. And I asked Christina and Sophia about their expectations for their first time here at the festival. So I'm going to kick it over to you guys first. Sophia, you can start. How did you like the Telluride Film Festival?
I never want to leave. This is the best place on earth. It's the greatest film festival, period. I'm not kidding. I've been to quite a few, and I just feel like Telluride has just such a unique quality to it. It's so intimate, and I brought up when we recorded that preview episode that I was excited by the fact that there aren't awards here. It's something that feels like a celebration of the filmmakers, of the films, and I was right about that, but also like nothing that happened here, it all surpassed my expectations. Like anything that I expected just went out the window the second I got here, because it really is surreal. Like you are in one of the most beautiful places on earth, getting to spend all of your time watching movies. And yeah, I just loved meeting people and waiting in line. It was just so wonderful. And the movies were incredible. Like the slate was just better than... And I know we did predictions on the slate, but actually seeing the movies and learning about the quality of the movies just made everything that much better.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right, because we can play the guessing game all we want as to what movies are going to be here, and Erik does a good job. You did a good job covering all that. And yet, it's when we get here, Christina was lucky to get here a little bit before all of us and get the schedule and start sending it out, and we were all in our airports kind of frantically trying to figure out what we were going to see opening night. But Christina, this was much like all of us, but especially for you, this was such a big bucket list.
It was.
Item, right?
And I echo everything that Sophia said, and it was over and above any expectations I would have had. I think Julie Hunsinger and her crew, the way they curate this festival, and I've also been to quite a few festivals, it was at least 5 or 6 that I'm willing to say are almost masterpieces of the movies that I saw, and everything else was really, really interesting and good. So I'm really impressed by that. We made, I think, line friends, people behind us and in front of us, and what we talked about was movies. What did you see? What did you like? And everyone was so enthusiastic, with some incredibly fun celebrity encounters who just seem so, they're in their t-shirts and jeans, and they're also in line. What did you see? What do you want to see? And it's just such a humble experience in the midst of these glorious mountains where it's just amazing. It really was fantastic. And to be able to be here with you as well, as I said at the beginning, was just over and above what I could have expected.
Yeah. Erik, year 5, right?
It's technically 4 because 2020 was canceled. Otherwise, this would be my 5th. But 4th in person, yes.
Yeah. And it was different than when we did the show last year, live here, because obviously there's a big thing that's looming over Hollywood right now, and it has talked a lot about at Venice, has talked a lot about here at the Telluride Film Festival, which is the SAG and WGA strikes that are going on. Not a lot of photo ops, not a lot of photos to be taken. I think Julie Hunsinger was trying to do the best she can to be sensitive to everything that's going on in the industry.
The actors that were
here. The actors that were here that were not, I repeat, not promoting their material, but just wanted to come and be kind of just fans of cinema for the weekend. But how did you, what did you think about all of that, Erik, and how it was handled?
Well, I think one of the fun things about the Telluride Film Festival is that even in its 50th year, it feels all the time like the early days of Sundance, which was never really about star quality kind of elements. And, you know, like Christina said, the actors that are here are in jeans and t-shirts and hanging out in lines and doing everything like any of us else are. And they're here for the exact same reason that we're here. So conversations and interactions with actors and directors and anybody involved in their films are really on the same kind of playing level in a way that I think they want and prefer, and we do as well. I think this year might be the best single year of films since I've been coming. I think it was extraordinary. And like everyone said, even though we, you know, looked at the likelies and what was going to be here, it doesn't really matter until you're here and you actually see them. And I think almost everything surpassed what we thought that they were going to be. It definitely brought everything really back to the movies by not having, you know, a really high level of actor involvement. And I certainly miss that. I think anybody else does as well. And I think we had like one experience today talking to Casey Affleck during the brunch, who sat down at our table and just wanted to talk about Zone of Interest. And I'm glad that Christina and Sophia had that experience, because it's basically emblematic of what the entire festival is like, and the informality of it and the kind of equality of it. Because a lot of elements of the Telluride Film Festival, the expense and everything, kind of remove a certain level of equality to access.
There's an elite.
But once you're here, it feels like everybody is really on the same page at all times. And I just think that this lineup and this year was exceptional.
Yeah, and you know, for me, year two, totally different than the first year I was here. I mean, there were a lot less, I think, parties, and there were a lot less sort of the normal things that you would find at this festival, because I think of the WGA strike and because of SAG. And I think that everyone here did, for the most part, the best they could to acknowledge what the ongoing situation is. And it's not getting any better, but we still wanted to see movies, and we still wanted to be together. We had great experiences, like what you're talking about. You know, you all got to see Casey Affleck for a couple of minutes today at the Patron brunch or
no,
it's
not
lunch.
It's not just that we got to see; it was just that it was.
You got to talk to
we
him.
were just
But
having burgers and talking about a movie.
That's what happens.
Yeah. So informal.
But that happens more and more throughout the festival normally than just a one-time occurrence. And it's
or we're running into Dakota Johnson in the bathroom.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which happened as well.
That's actually shockingly common at the Telluride Film Festival.
While you're crying.
Yeah.
Also crying.
Yes. Because of a movie.
But then we all got here. Sophia and mine's bus broke down trying to get
Oh
in.
my God, yeah.
That was not fun, but that was the only, I think, bad experience.
That's it, yeah.
On this whole trip, really, and I think that this is a place for anyone that's never been before, it's a place of true therapy for anybody that loves film. But really, the city of Telluride is so beautiful and has so much to offer outside of this film festival every single year, that you just come here and be taken by the beauty of this whole place, or ride the gondolas and go up, and explore up top of the mountains, on the other side of the mountains, everything that this place has to offer. But what this place does offer every Labor Day weekend is a bounty of movies that we will all be talking about throughout the fall season. And it's one of the first kickoffs into the Oscar season. Now, we are not going to be talking about any Oscar predictions whatsoever. So if you're going to be turning this thing off right now, you can, blame Erik Anderson for that. But it was his decision. But also, not everybody on the team has seen these films yet. There are also a lot of stuff out of Venice that we haven't seen that we'd like to give reactions to down the road, especially after New York, the regional festivals, AFI. And also, it just wouldn't be right to talk about an incomplete year when we have not seen the full slate of stuff. But it did give a lot of interesting perspective on some films that we were looking forward to. And there was one film that was the first film that we all saw together.
Can I just first say that I identified a couple of themes before we get into the bulk of the movies that I just want to quickly say. First of all, people, sex is back at the movies. And it's
she's not lying.
Great sex, empowered sex, crazy sex. We'll talk about which movies those were, but that's the first thing. The other one, we've already talked a little bit about that, and that's crying. I think many of us around this table cried. There's one certain movie I cried for an hour and 20 minutes, and that was very powerful emotionally in a way that I don't think I've had so intensely for 2-3 days. And the other one is Marriage Sucks. And those three things came and went in so many of the movies we saw, and that the writers and the artists that they curated for this particular festival seem to come back to so many times. I just wanted to set that stage before we jumped into it. Also, writers are having a bad time. Lots of writers are being depicted in movies having tremendous existential crises. So, and I happen to be married to one, so we'll see what he thinks when he sees these movies.
I don't know a single writer that isn't going through an existential crisis at any given time.
But these artists are obviously writing about themselves, which also that's why it's so personal, I think, many of the movies we're going to be talking about.
Well, some of these writers and directors are coming with that material for the first time since post-pandemic as well. And so it's interesting for them to bring that up. But yeah, that's probably also what every writer here at Telluride was feeling, a little bit of an existential crisis, especially when you have to look and make a schedule on Wednesday night and try to make sure you're hitting all the premieres. But they had the special Patreon screening, which was none other than the return of Jeff Nichols, who had been gone for 7 years since Loving and Midnight Special came out in the same year. And he returns with the Bikeriders that stars Tom Hardy and Austin Butler and Jodie Comer's interesting accent choices. And I wrote the review up on the website, which is live right now. I think that for the most of us, I'm not going to speak for everybody here, but at least from my experience, I really like Jeff Nichols as a director. I think his movies are usually very fantastic and very intimate depictions of life. And for some reason, this thing did not work for me at all. Beyond the technical achievements that I think that his team that he's been together for almost 15 years they really know how to make a damn good looking picture, but substance wise this thing is missing a lot of things. The performances are uneven in my opinion. Jodie Comer, my God, I still don't know where to side on this performance. Maybe I need to see it again, but Austin Butler, while good, I think is wasted. Hardy is kind of doing his usual grunts and Hardy, sort of stuff, that we've seen him do it before. But Sophia, what did you think of the Bikeriders?
The Bikeriders was fine. I think it was not, one of my favorite movies throughout the festival. I called it a Goodfellas ripoff.
Yes.
Based in Chicago. I think if you go into it, you will definitely see the similarities in terms of the framing devices, the music that's used. I think he's trying to go for something similar, but unfortunately it just didn't all add up for me. And I think that, his inspiration for the piece was interesting, looking at a book of photographs of all of these bike riders in Chicago, but it needed a little bit more for me. But I didn't hate it. I thought it was a fine start to the festival, but the two that I saw after really knocked it out of the park for me.
We'll talk about those here in a second.
Yep.
Christina, you were
I
probably more positive about than anyone here in the group about the Bikeriders, right?
Not about the film itself, which I thought was quite uneven. I do think there are particular scenes which were very interesting, but I am more positive than you on Jodie Comer, because I thought she was the one. If something helped this framing device and held it together, which didn't work, it was her. And she brought an emotional core to the movie that I didn't think the other characters really got any sort of backstory, any sort of explanation. They were just bike riders, so to speak. And I think she held it together, and I liked her performance. But I wouldn't say that the movie was something I'll be going back to.
Erik, did you like jumping on the Bikeriders, or would you like get me off of this?
Vroom vroom?
No.
No vroom vroom or vroom?
I hated it.
Hate?
Yeah, I really did. And the more that I've been able to kind of sit on it, and I think I gave it 2.5 stars, which I stand by, and I really did not like it.
You're not going to change your score?
I will not be changing my score after 12 hours of kind of just thinking about it for a minute. So I don't really.
But then you're not going to change it again after another 12
And
hours.
I'm not going to change it if somebody thinks that my opinion is wrong. So no, I will not be changing my score.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for clarifying. I think the audience wanted.
I have a little bit of integrity, but no, it's
a little bit.
It's certainly not something that I went in with any anticipation of not being good. I had nothing but hope because I love Jeff Nichols. I thought the idea was fantastic and the concept origin was fantastic, and I really like everybody in it. But it really did not take more than like 10 seconds for me to know that something was wrong, because it opened with that framing device of Jodie Comer doing an interview with Mike Feist, totally wasted and really problematic facial hair.
And they also never really explained that Mike Feist is playing the author. That
Exactly.
The book is based on.
No, I think they did enough of that because they talk plenty of times that he's making a book for.
But it still wasn't needed.
enough.
Yeah, it was.
The framing device was
He was wasted. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I do like him a lot. But at the same time, if he had been like one of the biker gang members, it would have felt obvious and really kind of cliche. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the moment that Jodie Comer opened her mouth, I couldn't be on board with it at all, because it felt so cartoony, and I was just shocked. I was shocked because I really do like her, and I felt like there was sort of a Kate Winslet murder dirter Barry Easttown kind of thing to it, where it was like, I am going to use a dialect coach that coaches me so specifically to a really particular sound, and never leave it. And I think part of the issues with accents sometimes when you are, obviously not from that region, is that it can feel cartoony, even if you're from there, it doesn't. So I have to absolutely.
You were saying it was pretty good, though.
Yeah. At times it's really good, but she really hams it up. I think in certain parts, and I think that it's in part due to her performance. Yes, and the acting, but it's also in the fact that she is the center of this story. And you have Austin Butler, who is this like beautiful, brooding, silent type. Tom Hardy, I also had issues with his accent and his performance.
I thought Tom Hardy was ridiculous.
Yeah, Tom Hardy did not.
Absolutely embarrassing.
He goes a little squeaky.
More than a little squeaky.
Yeah.
His voice gets like so high and like Tom and Jerry, like a little mouse.
Yeah.
At times.
I will say about Jodie Comer, though, just from hearing people in line, so like patrons or
line
friends, pass holders, not even other critics, just like I will say older people in line. They all loved Jodie Comer.
Yes. She was the reason that
we met a couple, and they said that they would have left if it wasn't for Jodie Comer.
Yeah. So.
And I get that, and I totally realized when I was putting together my feelings about it that I was on the outside for the most part, because so many people really did like Comer in this. I just was surprised, I guess, by it. I just it wasn't doing anything with the genre that it was kind of playing with. The concept is Tom Hardy is sort of bored and watches Marlon Brando's The Wild Ones on TV. This takes place in the 60s. That's a movie from the 50s. And so he's like, I'm inspired to make a biker gang. And he does. And
That's it.
That's it.
and then what?
Yeah, and that's what I kind of alluded to in the review, is that this doesn't have any sort of message to it.
There's no momentum.
And it's a real damn shame, because a couple of years ago, I was lucky enough to be at a Q&A with Nichols and with and Ty Sheridan and Lily Ray for the Tender Bar, and I actually talked to him about this project specifically, and he really wanted to do it. It's been something that he's been wanting to do for years, and as I was watching the film, I was thinking back to that conversation. I was going, but why, Jeff? Because this doesn't feel like, it feels like he's trying to do a new form of storytelling. Maybe it's sort of populist. Maybe it's different than his usual form of subtlety that I think that is what makes some of his movies just really work for me. Like a movie like Mud, for example, which I think is breathtaking. But I don't know. It was a mixed bag for that one. But then we departed each other, and Sophia and Christina and myself, we saw the new Alexander Payne film, which was The Holdovers, starring Paul Giamatti and Joy Divine Randolph and Dominic Sessa, and we really like this
Lovely.
one. This is a
Yeah.
lovely film.
I really, really liked it.
Really great return to form for Alexander Payne. Erik did not see this, so just hang on.
It
we'll
in
say
a
that
way
different.
a very the sort of curmudgeon movie we've seen before.
Yeah, and
A
Erik was very much
professor-
a curmudgeon and not wanting to see the Holdovers.
Right, and then he would have softened to it, and then we would have a twist, and then
We all would have gone to Boston, and it would have been a great time.
But the
right?
thing I really loved about it, or one of the things, was that all the main characters, all the actors were tremendous,
Yeah.
especially Divine Joy Randolph, who was just amazing. But he also gave all this little group of characters such great evolved backstories, which I don't think you see so much in this type of movie. They all had a trajectory. They all had an ending to where they started. They all grew. Not just the Paul Giamatti curmudgeon character, which is usually what happens in this type of movie. They all surround him and make him a better person, but nothing happens to them.
Mm-hmm.
But this didn't happen here. And you can speak to
Yeah.
the sort of the rest of the 70s look and feel,
Yeah.
which was amazing.
That was instantly for me what sold me on this movie. Like the second it started, I love the films of Robert Altman and Hal Ashby, and I think this was certainly influenced by those. I love those movies also because they're a little bit sour and sweet. You have these like very endearing, emotional, important moments for the characters, but you also have a lot of humor, some darkness that's woven in, and I feel like the tone of the movie was just perfect. I really loved that. I echo you on the performances. Dominic Sessa, great breakout.
Yeah, the new kid.
They
there
found
is-
him at the boarding school in Massachusetts.
Amazing.
So, yeah, I think that overall it was, I think, a big surprise for me because I was drawn to it from the trailer. I thought the trailer looked great, but it still had a lot of surprises that I didn't see coming.
Yeah,
And I thought the trailer was one of those trailers where you know
Yeah.
what it has, the middle to be everything. You see everything that's going to happen in the movie, even the twist when he lightens up to the boy and his issues. But that it surpassed that. The emotionality of it and how the growing of these, particularly the three characters in the center, surpassed whatever seemed like a film that we'd seen 200 times before.
I agree. Because
Erik just gave me a nice little fish.
yeah,
gummy.
Erik's like eating candy while we're trying to.
I don't have anything to say about this movie, so I'm just eating candy.
I agree because that was what you and I were talking
Yeah.
about. We were like, and I was like, oh, I think that there's going to be something more to this, and usually there are.
And I was the old person going, meow.
No, if you've seen the film, Ryan, you don't need anything else. But no, because that's what typical Alexander Payne movies do. They seem to have these very simplistic kind of story structures to it. It's very much sideways here, even hints of election in there as well, being in a school and whatnot. And so it's sort of back to basics after Downsizing, which was such a terrible movie. And I thought that this was great, getting to see Giamatti. Everyone's like, Sophia and I have talked about this, our parents can't shut the hell up about Paul Giamatti returning to the acting sphere. But I was just surprised by the tenderness and really the emotional turns that the screenplay takes us into that second half. I think each character really gets the investment to have that evolution that is not really typical of a movie like this. Like
That's
this,
what it
this
is.
is a crowd pleaser. Don't get me wrong, but it's
With
done
more depth. Crowd pleaser with more depth.
Yeah, exactly, more depth. And these three actors playing these characters together are absolutely incredible. I think Sophia mentioned Robert Altman. The first couple of shots are literally in the snow playing repetitive songs, so it evokes McCabe Miss Miller and films of his, but then also Hal Ashby of A Lonely Man. How he would being there was a movie that I thought about a lot while we were watching this.
Yeah,
and so just a movie that kind of surprised me how much I loved it and how much I laughed too. It's a very funny movie too, and definitely a winner for Alexander Payne. But while we were watching The Holdovers, you were on the other side of town, Erik, because you were watching Rustin.
Yes,
right?
and so that everybody knows, because this is such a very short festival and this was an extra day than it normally is, and there are so many world premieres, and most of what we're going to be talking about today are things that world premiered here, is that everything is scheduled up against each other. So you've got 4 world premieres all happening at the same time in 4 different places. So you really have to make some very serious choices about what you're going to watch and when you're going to watch and how to manage your time. And so I did prioritize Rustin first, even more than the movie that is my favorite movie of the year, that I also saw here. And it was largely because it's an important story that I had been waiting to watch for a very, very, very long time, and that is of Bayard Rustin, who was one of Martin Luther King Jr.'s closest confidants, and the orchestrator of the March on Washington, which just celebrated its 60th anniversary. So he is one of the many unsung, unheralded, and undocumented LGBTQ civil rights activists, or just any person in history that has had a huge impact. And so it was a story that I really, really was looking forward to and wanted to see. And it's from George Wolfe, who did Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, which I think is good. I think he's a better stage director and even television movie director than a film director. I think he steps up enormously with Rustin. It feels very cinematic. It looks very cinematic, even though so much of it takes place in rooms trying to argue and talk about how to get this march off the ground and on the ground. And I thought it was actually quite incredible. And Coleman Domingo, who plays Rustin, he is a legend and a veteran, yet this is his first lead role in a major film, which is insane. And it comes from Higher Ground, which is the Obama's production company that they have housed at Netflix. And I think this is such a perfect choice for them. I think Domingo is amazing. I think the entire cast is. Glenn Turman, absolutely on fire. I was incredibly moved, really pleased, and I thought it was wonderful.
Yeah, I really love Domingo as well. I thought he was the real reason to see the film, and also I think the thing that separates this film from Ma Rainey, at least for me, is having someone like Dustin Lance Black as a screenwriter here, having someone that has a cinematic lens to help Wolfe in his direction. And it's not a film that we haven't seen a kind of biopic like this before, but that lead performance really just carries it over. I know you saw it.
Yeah.
I saw it.
And, well, you both saw it.
Yeah,
Sophia?
I think with Rustin, I went into it with fairly low expectations because we get so many biopics every single year, and we sort of expect, a Wikipedia movie film, a Wikipedia entry or Cradle to Grave, something like that that's very standard. And I think that for Rustin, while the camera work and the direction, I didn't find that to be particularly inventive. I think that it is still a step above a lot of those biopics that we get year after year. And that is because of Colman Domingo's performance, I think.
Christina?
Colman Domingo was just amazing to me. He was, and this is one of the many where I cried. But I'm not going to say where at the end, but there's a couple 15 minutes at the end that really got me. But I want to say something about the direction, and what I thought was really beautiful about it was that there's these very serious talking scenes around the table that are very gripping, and they speak to the now, where we are today, what people are discussing and what's going on and what's happening. But then when they're preparing, when all these volunteers are preparing for this big day, he staged it like a musical. I don't know if you felt that.
Yeah.
But they're running from table to table. Three faces will show up, bum, 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 at the same time in a doorway. And you suddenly got this rush of energy, which in that type of talking around tables, biopic-y, very serious, we have to set up this march, was to me a very... it lightened something for me that I needed in contrast to what's going on.
No, I totally agree. I love that. I didn't think about that, actually.
I didn't think about it in terms of like putting on a musical, and that makes I'm like completely changed in just thinking about
but
that.
you liked it, right? I mean,
No,
wasn't it
that
gorgeous?
makes
Yeah,
sense.
I thought it gave it an energy that you need in these type of, that you can go in such a serious direction in this type of biopic that we've seen 200 times. That to me, it brought up this enthusiasm that these group of people had when you had to have this to be able to get through what they were going through, putting this together.
No, you're absolutely right, because that sort of style mimics the origin of this to begin with, which is a scene where they're writing out all the different ideas as a group, as a team.
And also like a song number.
Yeah,
I'm going to write it there. I'm going to write it there.
This lyric's mine. And
Exactly.
What if we put this in there?
And
What about this? It felt it's a collaborative process.
I love that.
You know, and
I think that's George Seawolf. I think
Yeah.
Dustin Landsbach really helped put it together, but that I think was all him
yeah,
in terms of direction.
I think there's something just also kind of wonderfully unique about the fact that Bayard Rustin was a community organizer. That was his beginnings. Obama began his career as a community organizer.
Right.
Having him introduce the film on video, and be an executive producer on it is such a neat kind of full circle moment about possibilities and origins and what you can do despite every possible thing being in your way. And for Rustin and his team of amazing volunteers and people was insurmountable until it wasn't. And that's the greatness of the story.
I also think it's really important that 3 gay men are truly the ones that are responsible for telling this story.
And Julian Brees, just to be sure,
yes.
the story and the
Yes.
co-screenwriter Julian Brees.
Yes,
Right.
but Wolf and Lance Black, and then Domingo, who is, I can't overstate this enough how wonderful he is in this movie, and it's so great for him to finally have this moment. And from the moment the camera zooms in on him, the movie's his. It's great. Then later that night, speaking of that favorite movie, I think Eric's alluding to, we all saw Emerald Fennell's Saltburn. And
That's not the one you're alluding
That's
to.
not the one you're
No,
referring to?
even
That's
though
not my favorite.
That's the one that I think we've been talking about the most.
Even though Saltburn is a eureka moment in my
there's a lot
movie
of
going life.
I thought that I was, but I think I definitely know what the other one is now. But it's definitely the one that this group here has been talking about the most. And I'm going to.
Some of us saw it twice.
Some of us saw it twice. And I'm speaking, of course, about Christina and Sophia, Sophia wrote the review that's up on the website right now, and we've been kind of obsessing about it. And you want to tell everybody why we're obsessing about it? Because
oh my god,
at least you and I, we've been on the record as stating that we are not as big of fans as Promising Young Woman. So we kind of went in this with not as high as expectations as a lot of other people. But why did you love it though?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where really to begin with Saltburn and why we've talked about it so much and why I loved it so much. But
begin with the armpit.
Oh my God, right? It is the way that, so I think just to start, this movie is Emerald Fennell's follow-up to Promising Young Woman, like you said, but I think that Promising Young Woman was rooted in controversy before you really even saw it, because it was about, you know, sexual assault and the Me Too movement, and it was really oriented in a very, I think, an unreal place that became very real in the movie, and a lot of people had trouble with some of the decisions that Fennell made. This movie was set, I think, in a perfect place for her. It is really in her sweet spot. So it's about this boy named Oliver Quick, played by Barry Keoghan, in one of the most fearless performances of the year. We're going to talk about another one from a movie soon that I think fits in that category too, but he goes to Oxford. He's an outsider. He's smarter than everyone else. He's a loner, and all of the rich kids are, you know, beautiful, and they're hanging out without him. And one of those kids is Jacob Elordi. He plays Felix Catton, and he and his family are wealthy, like uber wealthy, like Downton Abbey wealthy, and they have an estate called Saltburn, which is where the title comes from. And the movie is just this. So Oliver ends up going to Saltburn for the summer. He kind of wiggles his way in with Felix and his crowd, and
not just wiggles, he gets Felix sympathies.
Well,
really,
yes, totally gets his sympathies, yeah. And I think that the movie itself is just this rowdy, horny, debaucherous ride, and I think it plays so well with just gothic themes, and she really blends the old and the new, the historic and the modern so well. And you will just be shocked by so many images in this movie. And it's not shock, you know, with just for shock's sake or without substance. I really think that everything that she does in this movie has a purpose and is really smart. And yeah, I loved it so much. I saw it twice. And I can't wait to see it again and to go with my friends to see it, because it is just a wild romp, truly.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. But I just want to say, of all the plethora of movies we've seen about the very, very uber rich, this is just such a great one. And that's for that I want to mention the parents, the owners of Saltburn, played by Richard E. Grant and Rosamund Pike, which are like my favorite rich parents ever. Rosamund Pike's delivery and her view on life. I don't want to spoil anything by giving away any of the things she said, but those two, their interactions and the bubble that they're living in is just absolutely hilarious. Sad, but absolutely hilarious. And I think that Emerald Fennell has a way of being so subtle in what she's attacking, and she does it with humor, and she does it in such a brilliant way that at the end you spend so much time thinking about what is she saying and what does she want to do with this, that it just gives you hours and hours of food for thought, while at the same time you had such a great time at the movies.
What do you think, Erik?
Oh, I love it. I think it's a masterpiece. I came in already.
The M word.
You might hear that more than a couple of times.
Me too.
I'll say it at least once.
I came in already being a really huge fan of Promising Young Woman all the way from beginning to end. But I think maybe one of the things that befell the film and Fennell was being a completely contemporary film and wanting to make a very strong but satirical comment on Me Too and on on sexual assault. It didn't sit well with a lot of people, and tonally didn't work, and I totally get that. And I think with Saltburn, putting the action in 2006, which chronologically for her, she would be about the age of the people involved, or really, really close. I think she hit her sweet spot of not only understanding the era, but also infusing all of the things that she loves, Gothic literature and everything that she's interested in already. And I think the confluence of all of those things made for a much better film than Promising Young Woman. I think it is absolutely the success of that, because it felt more natural, I guess, for her.
Yeah.
And between the soundtrack, which is extraordinary, to every single performance in this, whether it was, yes, the parents, or the absolutely psychotic butler, Duncan, in this movie,
Fabulous.
who when you see him, you will love and be terrified by him. But this is, to Christina's comment earlier about sex is back, this movie is diabolically sexy.
So sexy.
Horny as fuck.
It is, yeah.
Between the actual sex that's in the movie and just the mere existence of Jacob Elordi rolling around in fields, in sequences that feel like perfume ads, it is incredibly voyeuristic and sun-drenched and just absolutely gorgeous.
It's not the sex that's sexy in this.
It's never the sex that's sexy.
But it's
everything
everything
around
else.
it.
Yes.
Everything.
It's sweaty and it's...
So nice. I think that the first two acts of Promising Young Woman is a really great film, and I've said that I think that it does, like you're mentioning, Erik, I think it crumbles because I do think that is such a tight rope for her and anyone really to sort of walk on, and to make a satire in the Me Too era, and and you can pick it apart and whatnot. It's very tough. I think that this is, like Sophia, you're saying, she's very comfortable in this. This is a society of people that she knows from her life.
Yeah.
And she is able to point a finger at them and do such a fantastic job of tearing them down. I'm not a fan of like Adam McKay films or a movie like Triangle of Sadness last year, the sort of mold of like what Christina was saying of the eat the rich.
Yes.
But this is eating them and spitting them out, and such a beautiful way of doing it. I think, a lot will be said about, the sort of
Can I say something about Emerald and the thing about how Emerald portrays the rich is that she has that British way of doing it, is that she actually thinks they're really funny. Yeah. And she actually knows that in their weird bubble they are very learned and they can speak very well, and that's something that she uses and she feeds off British humor. She talked a lot in the Q&A about Downton Abbey and references that she's all taken from all over them. I think she really knows that type, and she again, she was in The Crown. I mean, she knows this world so well, and she has some kind of weird love for the aristocrats of England.
You cannot make a good satire if you don't actually enjoy
That's
the
my
thing
point.
that you're satirizing.
That's my point, and she knows that.
But also too, that's the thing about Promising Young Woman, is that's such an American film, and she's very British.
Lots of dissing about this movie that I like. Are we going there?
I
love this movie.
I will reiterate, I am 100% Promising Young Woman all the way through to the very end.
And that we saw years ago, so let's continue on.
I think that this is almost, it's like a Three Billboards and sort of Banshees of Inisherin sort of thing, where someone knows the environment that they're in and much more comfortable than actually going outside the box of the comfort zone.
That's true.
And so that's what, and with that, then they're able to create something that I think is truly special and transcendent, with performances that are out of this world. I mean, Jacob Elordi has never been any better. Barry Keoghan, coming off of an Oscar nomination, delivering probably the best performance of his career, this twisted Oliver Quick, which is a wonderful name.
I mean, this is the best for me that Rosamund Pike has ever done.
Oh, yes.
And I love Gone Girl. Gone Girl, but she is wicked as Elspeth,
Richard
this Ice
Grant
Queen
too, as well. I mean, even Carey Mulligan's two scenes, which are
she's so
absolutely
spectacular,
insanely hysterical, and it from all the needle drops, production design, all of it. It's such a level up for her.
I wish this movie was coming out before Halloween because the gays
know.
would absolutely have Carey Mulligan costumes.
Oh, that costume.
Oh, yeah. Love it. Can't wait for everyone to see it. We're not going to talk really about spoilers a lot for it because there's a lot
But
of
since
spoilers.
Sophia and I saw it again, and then can we talk about it again?
No. We're gonna go on.
It's like,
Nice try.
read my review though. If you want to hear
yes,
more.
great.
But we're going to dive into something else. If you want to start talking about it, Christina. And that is, we're going to talk about NYAD, which is the next one that we all saw together. So
I'm giving this to Sophia to talk about first because I really want to hear that.
We're in the shallow now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So-
we're off the deep end.
So you wanna talk
watching
about
Annette Bening dive
swimming?
in.
do you want to talk about NYAD? Because I think we're all...
Yeah. You're all pointing to me. That's fine. I wrote the review for NYAD, and NYAD is a biopic about Diana NYAD, who's a very controversial figure. She's a marathon swimmer who swam from Cuba to Florida at the age of 64, played by Annette Bening, and this movie documents that journey for her. It does not touch on those controversies, though, that I'm alluding to, which are basically that in the swimming world, she's been accused of cheating and of embellishing a lot of her records and her accomplishments, and
Including the events in the film.
correct.
Right.
We see.
Yes, the events in the film, right. So I think that here the filmmakers are far more interested in attacking, the logistics of the race and of her accomplishment, and not so much in digging into who she is as a character. And I think for me, that's why the film really fell apart. It really was the script trying to bite off way more than it could chew, and not really getting into the meat of this person. And at times it's rather silly, I will say, unintentionally. We had some moments of unintentional comedy throughout that we were laughing quite a bit at.
Yeah. We've
but
been
I
laughing quite a bit
still
after seeing it.
But I think people will be tempted to call this a crowd pleaser, something that's very heartwarming, and I think that's fine. But for me, I expect a little bit more out of my sports stories, my sports movies. That's a genre I really love and can be really moved by. And I was really moved by the performances, specifically Jodie Foster's. So Jodie Foster plays Bonnie Stoll, who is Diana's lifelong best friend practically, and she becomes her swim coach. And I think that Jodie Foster, she's just such a presence in the industry and on screen. She has this particular style of leadership and athleticism that comes through, but she is the heart of the film. Her role is underwritten, right? And she severely underwritten, but she, I think, makes the most of it and comes away, for me, stealing the movie. I loved her in it. I thought she was fabulous.
I agree, but like we were talking about with the Holdovers and with Saltburn, how the supporting characters are so developed and they have an arc. It really frustrated me so much that Jodie Foster and Bonnie is such a huge character in her life. She helped, according to this film at least, her accomplish this mission 5 times of trying to swim from Cuba to Florida, and we know nothing about her. We know nothing about what she actually does. She wasn't officially her trainer. And then I felt that this was the type of biopic where you're seeing flashbacks from her youth in the most conventional, most biopic-y way absolutely imaginable. I'm not going to give anything away, but that certain things almost became laughable, I'm afraid. But then I also want to mention Annette Bening's also great, and she's really giving it her all, and she's really a force in this film, and so the two of them are kind of saving it for me. Yeah.
Erik, did you like it? Or did you hate it?
I didn't hate it, but I gave it the same score as the Bikeriders, but I definitely didn't like it. It's interesting that we're talking about this and Rustin at the same time. These are both Netflix films. These are both world premieres here. They are both biopics. Yeah. And they both do take a relatively traditional approach to the biopic, yet I very clearly Rustin is the more successful of the two. I was really intrigued from the beginning because this is the narrative feature debut from Elizabeth Chai Besserhelli and Jimmy Chin, who make incredible documentaries like Free Solo and The Rescue about very real and extreme personalities in the sports world who literally risk their lives for their sport. So the idea of them directing this makes perfect sense, and it all kind of should have really been there. But right from the beginning, literally the opening scenes in the movie are the pre-recorded video that we already know and see of Diane and NYAD. So instead of introducing us to NYAD, aka Water Nymph, in the form of Annette Bening, we're already introduced to NYAD, the real person, and so getting us into the feature film takes time, and I really think it was a huge detriment to do that, because we spend quite a lot of time with historical footage before we get into the actual film.
It seems it's almost like it itched for these documentarians to make a documentary.
It was definitely that. It was also felt like second guessing themselves and just kind of a little nervous.
Should we do one or should we do the other?
As first time. I do think Bening is fantastic, although I think anyone that sees this will see a lot of the kids are all right in this performance. It's very, very similar. I think Jodie Foster, I agree with Sophia. I think she is absolutely the best part of it. She's also very Jodie Foster in this, but she's also tan and buff and
got a six-pack,
fully lesbian, and just really out there.
Pounding those Diet Cokes.
Yes, Diet Cokes and poop bags from Petco. I mean, you know what's going on here. She's fantastic. I think she's really good. I think she has moments that, despite the incredibly clunky bad script, that she tries to rise above, but it's really hard to rise above a bad script. And so the big heavy moments between like Bening and Foster in this are definitely downgraded by the fact that their dialogue is so bad and just kind of perfunctory. But they are both really fantastic.
Yeah, I agree. The performances here are really good. I think Jodie Foster is fantastic, but she's completely underwritten. We've been asking a lot of questions this weekend of what her job really is.
Because at one point she yells.
She's like, I have clients. And you're like,
what clients?
What the hell are you talking about?
Really? You had a job?
Yeah, and there's a lot of things that I think if the script was in the hands of a better screenwriter, there would have been a lot of fleshing out. I think it would have been interesting to explore not the current controversies that NYAD has, because those are different from the era in which the film is depicted. But it definitely to not address at all at any point by the directors pre or post the screening or in the film that this achievement is in massive questioning by the sports community, and that she is a massive controversial figure within her sport, even before any of her comments of late. So I think that is a little bit of hand-holding, and we were talking about it in comparison to something like King Richard, which is a sports biopic that's come out recently that'll have a big awards contender for an actor. But the problem with that film is or not the problem with that film, is that does actually question Richard Williams. I think a lot in that, especially the Audrey Ellis character. In this one, I think that Jodie Foster's character, they're all at NYAD's sort of command, and they're not really fleshed out, and they're not given enough agency to really understand who they are. And she doesn't come off at all as grateful for all the work that they put in. She's some would call her selfish. I think most athletes have a lot of selfishness in her, but I think that this one really does.
And I don't even think that's a big issue, because they don't have any problem presenting her as very prickly and all of the elements of her personality that are known, which are very difficult to work with and all of that, which is great, because obviously what is the point of making a movie about somebody that's easy to get along with? There's no narrative dramatic curve there whatsoever. So they're not afraid of that, but they're certainly afraid of virtually anything else.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, movies embellish the truth a lot to make these to make.
It's also this also comes from her own autobiography, and she is an integral
Yeah.
part of the movie. So there you
Yeah,
go.
I know, I understand that, but at the same token, though, you got to be able to change it up. You got to be able to make it not as bland as it comes out to be, but Foster's good, and there's some underwater sequences that are truly one of the funniest and stupidest things I've ever seen in my goddamn life. And
if you
The
like The Little
unintentional
Mermaid, you're gonna love
this
one
one.
of the sequences in NYAD.
You know what we needed though? Jodie Foster and Annette Bening singing the Scuttlebutt.
Clearly,
Yep.
clearly.
clearly. Moving on, Eric's favorite film of the festival. I want to talk about it. This was probably, we talked about this as a group, maybe probably one of the best days we've ever had movie going watching, and we watched a lot of these films together. But I want to talk about this one first, which is All the Strangers. Eric was pretty moved by it. Not just because Paul Mescal's man was in it, but what did you love about All the Strangers? World premiere here at Telluride.
I mean, again, you can't get more Erik coded than an Andrew Hay movie that stars Paul Mescal, Andrew Scott, Jamie Bell, and Claire Foy to a lesser extent. But still, I mean, that's
Sorry, Claire Foy.
That's me. Oh, and it's gay, and I'm like, what could I possibly,
It's got the 80s.
not like about this?
Britpop.
So yeah, so you have to enter something going, obviously I feel preordained that I'm going to like it, and there's nothing I like more than when something is able to so far exceed hopes and expectations and my own bias toward probably liking it, and this did this in a way that was truly unexpected. It is the story of a late 40s single gay man in London, late 80s, and he's trying to write this script that details his working class parents. He's very, very writerly, as you were saying earlier, the struggles and difficulties that writers are writing themselves into movies right now. And he's having an incredibly difficult time. He can barely get past the intro of the script itself. And he's visited by this neighbor in his apartment complex, which seems very barren and very few people living in there. And it's Paul Mescal, and he has this bottle of Japanese whiskey, and he is drunk out of his mind. And they had sort of seen each other before, just through windows. And Mescal is very drunk, very horny, very seductive, and wants to enter the apartment and enter Scott. And Scott is kind of like, I want to do this. You can see that he wants to, and he's like, no, I can't really do this. And the crux of the story is really him relitigating his past and his parents who died in a car accident when he was 12 years old. And it is not really spoilers to explain that this is a ghost story where he revisits his hometown and his home where he grew up, where his parents still are in a spiritual form. And I mean, obviously, being gay and growing up in the 80s and exactly everything that this movie takes place in, I'm going to be drawn to it. But I was not really prepared for how existential the exploration of what it was like growing up at that time, the need for a really specific time of parental affirmation, as well as parents that realize that they did not give that affirmation. And one of the great things the movie does is that it's allowing them to do that. in this sort of afterworld, and it's not a supernatural film in any way. Everything that happens in this sort of ghost-like way is very direct, and it doesn't feel, I don't know, it's not sci-fi, it's not anything like that. And I know I'm going very long on this. I think it understood what it was like to be single and gay in the 80s, and anything that takes place in any period that's not now is always speaking to now. Nothing is ever completely in the bubble of the time period that it's talking about. So you have to be able to watch, a movie that takes place in 87 with a lens of 2023, and I think it still is trying to speak to fear and love and how to love and how to let go of things, and I just think it's one of the most extraordinary things I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's really great. Moved us all to tears. Mm-hmm. Probably one of the best needle drop endings I've seen in quite some time. Mescal and Scott are tremendous, but I know
I haven't even really talked about how great Mescal is in this, but he is phenomenal. Scott, the best thing he has ever done. Claire Foy, maybe my favorite thing that I've ever seen her in. Mm-hmm. And Jamie Bell, I will always love until the end of days.
Well, this movie devastated me. It's my favorite of this weekend. And I'm not coming from it from the same direction that Erik's movie. It could have been a waste of just a big long metaphor. A metaphor for what your parents should have told you. A metaphor for what love is. But in what you were saying so eloquently before, in this straightforwardness of the movie, that it's just happening, there's not any woo ghostly type of thing, even though it is a ghost story. The reality of the relationships between these people was so strong for me that I immediately, between my tears, started texting important people in my life to make sure I had said this and that. It makes me want to cry thinking about it now. I think we had the same.
Both Christina and I, right after the films, texted our son like immediately. And
right.
it was
and without
so
knowing,
visceral.
We looked at each other and the music, which is music we're from the same era.
Frankie goes to Hollywood. Oh my God.
The House Martins, all kinds of things that were, and these central performances, the four of them, were so natural and so strong. And Andrew Scott is in so much pain that somehow you're living it with him, but you're crying. I mean, it's not like you're crying just of desperate sadness. You're also crying that he's actually closing several circles in his life. That's what really moved me at the end. And it wasn't, people say, oh, it's such a sad, depressing. It wasn't for me. He closed every circle that was open when we started the movie in a way that I don't even know how Andrew Hay did that.
No,
I still can't figure it out.
I think it's a movie about healing.
Yes.
Completely, 100%. And reckoning with yourself in the past and even the present, and
imagine to be able to do that. Imagine to be able to reckon with a past that seems that's over. Yeah. People are dead. This is years of, and you do that, and that to me was just you don't get that chance. That's why we texted our sons.
The central premise of the movie really is just that idea of, like, what if you could go back in time and say the things that you wish you could say to people, or have the conversations that you were never able to have. And I can't believe he pulled it off in the way that he did. And I think it is because of what you were saying, right? It's not a supernatural film. The ghosts they look like people. They look like his parents when they died at that age. And that makes it grounded in reality, which makes the relationships all the more real. And yes, bring tissues for sure. I sobbed.
I think
we were the Rex, the formula.
I think a movie that we have to talk about here, it was a canned title, but this is a movie that definitely we could provide tissues for, was Jonathan Glazer's The Zone of Interest, which was my favorite film at the festival. It might be
Masterpiece.
It might be my new favorite film of the year.
It's big.
It's an extraordinary film about this family that are living essentially a dream life, a life that they dreamed of. They literally say that in the film. And the house and the garden are outside of Auschwitz, and he is the head commandant of it. I think I've been a massive Jonathan Glazer fan for years. I've been waiting for this movie for such a long time. I saw the reaction at a Cannes, and man, it's hard to not even talk about it without trying to get emotional. It's such a beautiful, heartbreaking Holocaust drama, and it's impeccably directed. This is an impeccably directed film. It is his movie through and through. These performances are extraordinary. The direction, though, is out of control. We talked about it a lot, and I think Sophia heard Glazer talk about the multi-camera, Big Brother-esque sort of setups that he has throughout this house to make it so vast. And it really is, weirdly enough, another film this year about someone that is grappling with this dangerous job that they have. It's very. I was thinking a lot about how, Christina and I were talking about it being a little bit of almost a call and response to Oppenheimer in a lot of ways, and especially
guilt and morality.
Especially, I think the last 5 minutes of the film are doing that. But I think Glazer's, I would say, his film is a lot more interesting than Nolan's. As much as I love that film, this movie is deconstructing the Holocaust drama that we know. And Erik and I and Sophia, we recently did a 1993 retrospective, and we watched on this list, and I can say this without any hesitation: this movie makes that movie look lesser, because this isn't showing, it's listening, and it's reacting, and it's making you as the audience imagine the atrocities that are happening over the wall.
Well, what Erik and I
never get over the wall.
What Erik and I were talking about is that you come to this movie with the context already in you.
Yes.
You come knowing what's on the other side of the wall that we never get to see, and what you're watching is a family doing normal things, struggling with a transfer. The wife doesn't want to move, he has to move, and all the while you know what job he has, what's going on the other side of the wall, that the mother's building this garden to sort of, even though she knows what's happening, to make her life beautiful, but knowing the complicity of silence. It really, really got me. I was thinking about, we talked about that just a while ago today, the feelings that one has today about what we know and what we're doing and not doing and what's happening all over the world, and the rise of right-wing and fascism. It was absolutely one of the most powerful movies I've seen.
Yeah. It's my favorite movie of the year so far, period. I think that what Jonathan Glazer does also is the greatest achievement in directing that we have this year. And I think it's hard, because I think that Holocaust movies, right, as this subgenre, we're so familiar with what that looks like and what that means. And typically it means seeing horrifying images. And here, what Glazer does is he makes two films, essentially, that are running at the same time in this one film. And one is this anthropological study of the Haas family in this beautiful, bright house outside of those walls. And then the other film is the film that we hear. And those are all of the sounds that are coming from Auschwitz. And the sound in this movie, it is tremendous work. It is horrifying. There are sounds that will not escape your brain after you watch this. There's a particular scream that I can still hear if I think about it.
Contrasted to a picture of a beautiful flower.
Exactly. Yeah. And
it's just,
again, like you were saying, right, that those sounds are aided by images that are already in our heads, and his command over the camera and every single shot of this movie and exactly what he's trying to accomplish here it's to make, we're supposed to watch this movie and interrogate our place in the world and how we feel about our actions and our complacency or how complicit we can be. And yeah, I think it's a profound work, and it has the potential of being the definitive Holocaust film, period.
Yeah, it is a terrifying movie.
Yes.
And
can't understate that.
The main reason for me that it is that it does what a really great film can do, and that is take what is a seemingly ordinary story and placing it into an extraordinary situation. And this is, at its core, it's not actually a Holocaust film. At its core, it is a family drama, like Christina said, about a man who wants to rise up in his company. The movie is filled with board meetings about generals congratulating men for beating their labor totals, and what those labor totals are bodies. And then Sandra Hüller, absolutely terrifyingly chilling in this, as a housewife who is confronted with possibly having to move after creating this wonderful home. You can put a story like that in almost any genre of film. Putting it into something like this is so incredibly challenging for the audience, because unlike most Holocaust movies which focus on the perpetrators, you're not going to relate to what they're doing. You're going to be horrified by what they're doing because you have never experienced anything like that. What this family is experiencing is a very general thing, so you're really forced to not necessarily sympathize, but to absolutely relate to the exact situation, which makes you very uncomfortable. And I think if you're gonna push back on the movie, I think that might be an undercurrent of why. I'm not saying that you have a wrong opinion for not liking something, but maybe the reason why is because you are really being forced to analyze and challenge something in yourself that you don't think you ever would have had to. But aside from that, just as a film, and Glazer as a filmmaker, it's an extraordinary piece of work.
I don't know how he keeps getting better. And this has been it's almost 10 years since he's made a film Under the Skin, and we get this. This is very much reminiscence of last year, where we spent how many years waiting for Todd Field to return with Tar, and we get these cold, complicated masterpieces. I will use the M word now because I think that this movie
absolutely a masterpiece.
An undoubtable masterpiece. I mean, I was sitting there crying, not at the images themselves, like you're talking about, Erik, but at the idea of what is going on, the sound. There's a flower image that turns the screen bright red. You know exactly what that means. The ending is, last 5 minutes is extraordinary work, and complicated. And yeah, I haven't been able to get it out of my head. I don't know how anyone I can was able to get it out of their head either. It was the runner-up for the Palme d'Or. That was
and the performances, both of them, the couple, Sandra Hüller and Christian Friedl, right?
Yes.
They are absolutely chilling and perfect, and every move they make just is amazing. And two incredible performances by Sandra Hüller at this year that just are unbelievable.
Yeah, she's
in
incredible.
Anatomy of a Fall as well.
Yeah, she's incredible in Anatomy of a Fall. She's incredible in this. Very Lady Macbeth almost.
I'm also such a big proponent of knowing how to end your film.
Oh yeah.
A really good ending will absolutely kind of nail it for me. All of Us Strangers has one of the most breathtaking final shots of anything ever. The final moments in Zone of Interest, again, are just... I feel like this year is working on a different level of mastery.
Left me numb. I had to go walk. Like I had to. I mean,
I
Christina
couldn't
was crying.
eat all day.
I was in the bathroom sobbing. That's
But not. It's not on like a bad way. It's just like you have to.
It's sitting with a profound piece of art that it makes you feel that way.
So if you're out there and want to challenge yourself, watch The Damn Zone of Interest. It's wonderful.
Yes, and we should kind of be telling people, as much as we can when things are coming out. Strangers is Searchlight Pictures. It's out in December. Zone of Interest is A24. It's
like November, December as well.
Yeah, I mean a lot of what we're talking about today will be
October, November, December kind of releases.
Yes.
One big film, and then we'll sort of start wrapping this up, and that's the big tribute of the weekend was for Yorgos Lanthimos, his latest film, Poor Things. He flew all the way to Venice just to come see us, and then the poor man looked jet lagged, but his movie is
more fabulous sex.
More fabulous sex.
Yes.
Christina's like, please, all the sex. And it's been interesting, the sort of conversation around sex for that film or sex for any of these films. Maybe people should go and touch grass. But other than that...
Or ass.
It's not shocking.
But I think that this is another wonderful film in collaboration with not only just Emma Stone, but Tony McNamara. That script for Poor Things is out of control. The production design, the costumes, the makeup on Willem Dafoe. Emma Stone's maybe her best performance.
It is.
Okay, all right.
When I mentioned that Barry Keoghan gave a fearless performance, and there was one other we would talk about, it was Emma Stone's in Poor Things.
Well, I think there's also another fearless performance in this too, and that's Mark Ruffalo. I think
he's so good.
Absolutely,
he's great.
Fantastic in this movie.
Yeah.
We'll talk a little bit about how it's about. So I mean,
So it's essentially a sort of Frankenstein's monster take on that, and it's about this kind of crazy scientist played by Willem Dafoe, and he finds this body, and he recreates it and puts the brain of a child inside of it.
Her own
baby that she's carrying.
And essentially raises it as
conservatives are gonna love it. It's so life.
Oh my god!
And as she progresses, she progresses and grows older, she goes on journeys, and it's very much an odyssey at that point.
Yeah.
And it's
an odyssey, and also about what women go through, and how about being controlled, first being made as a woman, then being controlled, and then confronting questions of why can't I do that, and pleasure, and what's wrong with feeling pleasure, and when she starts to read how men feel about what that happens, and she goes through ownership, and she goes through all these steps, which I have to say, this movie is, if the other ones we were talking about crying into, this is hilarious. I think I cried. I think I laughed every 5 minutes in this journey, because the writing is so absurd. I mean, the dialogue is so absurd, and you're realizing these things like, why are women going through this? What's happening here? And Mark Ruffalo is hysterically funny.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
One of his best things ever, I have to say.
I think
and
so
all
too.
this in a package of absolutely beautiful set design, Victorian, steampunkish, gorgeous costumes, sweeping, magical. I mean, there's like trams flying in the air. I mean, it's not realistic. It's just gorgeous. It's really amazing.
It's so imaginative.
Oh yeah.
Especially for Yorgos film.
And I'm really hot and cold on Lanthimos, but I loved this. I thought it was, if you think maybe that, and I loved Barbie, but if you think Barbie was maybe a bit general at times, and you wanted it to be a bit sharper, and you're looking maybe for more, not necessarily in that movie, but just in general, something raunchier. Like this fits that totally. I think it is a feminist masterpiece. I think in what it's saying about women and our like bodily autonomy, what we have and what we don't, how men want to control that in any way that they can, and in a woman's journey with her sexuality. I found it like very hilarious and empowering as she's kind of discovering how sex makes her feel. Yeah. It's just, I think the tone again is just, in a similar way to Saltburn, I think the tone is just like spot on with this one.
It's consistent throughout.
Consistent, and yeah, Emma Stone, I can't sing her praises enough. I just miss her so much.
She's such a wonderful performance and screen presence, and it seems like she has found her director now that she wants to work to. She's already, I believe, on her next project, already done her 5th project.
It was announced today that they've had a secret project and it's done.
Yeah,
their 5th together, counting several short movies.
They fit perfectly together, and I mean I love The Favorite, but this is taking it to like the next level. It's almost like Saltburn. You see one and then this is the step up for it.
I think one of the most extraordinary things about Stone in this is not simply the unprecedented level of nudity and sex that she has in the film, which is substantial, but it is the actual performance itself, because she does go from quite literally the mind of a baby who has to learn everything from walking to talking to anything and everything. And sort of like I said just a minute ago, no movie exists in a period without speaking to its current year. Yeah. And this does as well. Like you said, Sophie, whether it's body autonomy, there is a conversation about female circumcision that happens in the film to quell sexual desire that you cannot make almost a single moment in this film not relatable to the attack on women and women's bodies that are happening in the United States in 2023. So nothing exists really quite in a bubble without speaking to anything now. And I think what Stone does at every single moment is a balancing act of, yes, I'm kind of acting like a baby, but I'm not. It's not really. It's hers isn't quite as cartoony as Ruffalo's. Ruffalo's is very intentionally. His accent's a little ridiculous. It's a little Keanu Reeves and Dracula kind of, and very intentional.
Very hammy performance.
And hers is. It is quite literally a woman who is finding vocabulary in her voice, and you cannot see it any other way than that. So you, amongst all the absurdity that's happening, you are watching and following the journey of this woman and absolutely intoxicated by it. There is an entire sequence involving her escaping to a brothel and becoming a worker there because she has no money and she understands the power and the value that she can have with it. And I it's my favorite sequence in the entire film because I don't think anything represents what the movie is trying to say more than that sequence. It also has Katherine Hunter, who is an absolute goddamn legend.
And just also in your package there, the physicality of this role that she's doing with her legs and her arms, where she's actually not just, in dialogue and vocally going from baby to woman. She's actually physically doing that. And it's unbelievable what she's doing with her arms and her legs and twitching and running. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, she really goes from being an infant, like you're saying, Erik, to then the smartest character in the film.
And physical comedy is hard to pull off, and she nails it.
Yeah. And also a dance sequence that takes the favorite and throws it out the window because and lines of dialogue that I was literally on the other side of the row and I could hear Erik scream of one particular line of dialogue at a dinner sequence.
Yeah, I mean Emma Stone's character is pro baby punching, so obviously I'm totally on board with that. But I am terrified by Tony
because
McNamara.
To not have maternal feelings, that's the book.
Exactly. I think Tony McNamara is genius. He is terrifying. Between The Great and this, which happened at the same time, I'm in awe.
Yeah.
Let's hope he doesn't have an existential crisis.
That'd be a hell of a movie. We'd love to see that. We're going to start wrapping it up here, but I'm going to go around here. One last film that you guys would like to highlight or maybe talk about that you guys got to see at the festival. as everyone's pulling out their phones and pulling up their logs on Letterboxd to see what they want to talk about. Sophia, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I'm actually going to talk about a movie that you might want to talk about, so maybe we can talk about it together. But last night we saw The Royal Hotel, which is Kitty Green's follow-up to The Assistant, and it's just this nice, tight, 91-minute thriller. And it's about these two girls, played by Julia Garner and Jessica Henwick, and they're both fabulous in the movie. I love them, but they kind of they're running out of money, and they have to basically go and to this very remote area, work in a bar there for lodging, for money, and it just suddenly you start to notice threats that creep in, and specifically that revolve around alcohol and revolve around threatening men in that environment. And you just feel that remote environment, the isolation creep in, and it's terrifying. It's a really fun watch though, and it's something that I think, I don't know, it hit close to home for me in a way. Like, it was very relatable. And I don't know, I think though it's anchored by these two fantastic performances, and it's just a nice, fun watch. And Kitty Green really knows how to craft a subtle thriller. So I would recommend that one.
She's, I think, a new master of tension.
Mm-hmm.
Between The Assistant and this,
yeah.
you are uneasy from the beginning.
Yeah.
And she stated right before the film she wanted to make something, sort of unconventional. When you think of two girls in a backpack going on like a trip, you think of a comedy, or you think of something along those lines of like, hey, they're going to find themselves, and they kind of find themselves here, but they find themselves in a lot of the wrong reasons, and the interesting dynamics about men and almost the original drug, which is alcohol, and how it's used and it's weaponized here. I've found it to be really fascinating and another step up for Kitty Green after The Assistant. But Christina, film highlight?
Oof, it's hard to. I'm going to try to speak to two as quickly as possible. But the other one is the other Cannes title with Sandra Hüller, and that's The Anatomy of the Fall, which is also, I'm going to use the M word, a masterpiece, and also the M word, marriage, what we were talking about to begin with. And this is a part courtroom drama. Because I don't think it's a spoiler, it's in the trailer that the husband dies and she's accused of the murder. And it's also part an examination of this couple's marriage, where their son is learning about his parents and their marriage and all kinds of things because of the trial. And it is absolutely incredibly directed, written, tense, and there's particularly one fight scene between the couple that is horrifying but also extremely relatable if you've been in any sort of relationship that's really about, I'm doing more than you, you're doing more than me, and what this escalates into and how horrible it can sound, and the demands one is putting on each other, and also the sort of failure you feel that you are, so you're taking it out on the rest of your family. And I thought this was incredible.
Yeah, I mean,
and I think you agree. I don't know if we want to.
Yeah, I mean, I loved it. I think it's another masterpiece. I think it was a tough decision at Cannes this year as to which one they were going to give the Palme d'Or. Honestly, I would give it to Zone of Interest, but this is not far behind it. It's an extraordinarily tight, tense courtroom drama, and you're right. Every word and every action that Sandra Hüller has from the present and the past is weaponized and used against her, and then she has to fight back. And
and a fascinating look at the French court system.
Yes, the French court system.
Yeah.
Truly one of the more horrific scenes I've seen with an animal in quite some time. There's a child that is the child performance in the film as well. It's an absolutely captivating performance. One of the best screenplays, if not the best screenplay of the year, maybe.
I mean, I'll echo that. I think it was.
No, you don't have time for that.
I think it was incredible. It's I know I said it was Kramer versus Kramer meets Basic Instinct, and I still maintain that is
a lot more snow.
A reasonable comparison. Obviously, more Kramer versus Kramer. No, I think it's amazing. I think a lot of cinephiles know who Hüller is. They are going to be absolutely inundated by her this year with her 2 incredible major films. I really liked the very last film that we all saw together today, which was called Tuesday. And I'm going to butcher the director's name, and I'm going to feel really terrible about doing it because I've never heard or said it out loud. And it's Dana Onunas Pusik. Let's just say it's that.
Yes. Right.
And it is again a great way of storytelling that is slightly supernatural, slightly fantasy based, where death is a literal creature that goes through the world when people are at their time of death to literally wave them into their next form. And it is this kind of really outrageous, weird parrot creature. And Julia Louis-Dreyfus is the main star, and it is kind of a surprise seeing her in something like this, because it's just not really anything that she's really done before. But she's quite amazing in it. And I just found it to be very entertaining, silly when it needs to be, but visually stunning when it needs to be too. I mean, this is obviously a very small independent film, and the visual effects of the bird itself, which is a major character in the film, is pretty extraordinary. I think I'm always now going to be quite a sucker for parent-child stories. Obviously, I lean more to father-son stories. That's not like a big surprise, but I really enjoyed this a lot.
Yeah, I think also Lola Pettigrew as her daughter in the film too. They have extraordinary chemistry, and this was the most I've cried at a film in quite some time. For all of our listeners out there, I pulled a Pinocchio or an Aftersun or even a Luca. To be fair, I was an emotional wreck, and it kind of snuck up on me how, yes, some of the things in the film could seem a little heavy-handed in the execution of it, but I think the sincereness of the filmmaking and the connection of the performances are extraordinary. And yeah, I would not expect Julia Louis-Dreyfus to be in a movie like this, but I really think she does a fantastic job. And for a debut, I was surprised, and I had no ideas on what the damn thing was going in, and it really surprised me and knocked me out.
It's one of the few films that I have ever gone into knowing absolutely nothing, and I knew literally nothing going into it at all. It was I saw it because of a recommendation, and I was definitely going to see it because of the recommendation, and so it was really a pleasant surprise.
I'm gonna just last film, and then we'll wrap it up here to talk about a movie that I was very mixed on and put me in a bad mood on Friday, and that was Pablo Larraín's El Conde, which is about Pinochet being a vampire. Still don't know what this movie and who this movie's for. I think that on paper it is a really fascinating idea, talking about dictators being soulless, blood-sucking vampires, but also about the legacy that they leave behind. And I think that is a fascinating thing to talk about. In the execution, though, Pablo Larraín does not really make an interesting enough film. And it doesn't mean that the film is bad. I just don't think it works on every single level that he wants it to. There's a lot of scenes with his family that I think early on are really good. There's a character that's like a nun that comes in that doesn't work at all, I think, in sort of connecting it, right, Sophia? And then there's good old Margaret Thatcher that just shows up as well too, and you're just kind of sitting there going, by that point, what the hell is this? And it also feels like the movie's trying to end 3 times, and doesn't find one until the third one, when it probably should have been the first one. So, and it was a bummer too, because it's Ed Lachman cinematography.
Which is gorgeous.
Which is gorgeous,
Yeah.
and they shot it on black and white. They didn't convert it. Lachman was there. Lachman had some pretty touching things to say about Lorraine and his daughter before, Ed Lachman's daughter, before the screening, that were actually more emotionally impactful than anything in the film. But yeah, gotta stop watching Lorraine films at film festivals for myself, I think.
Yeah, I'm not really a huge Pablo Larraín fan. I'm pretty hot and cold on him too. This one, I really didn't click with its sense of humor, and I always have trouble when I can feel what a movie's trying to say in the first few minutes, and that was the case definitely with this one. It is, I will say, beautiful to look at though. Like, there are really stunning visuals because of Ed Lachman. And like you said, the concept is a great one in theory. And
there's a good couple chuckles in it.
The initial, like the first 15 minutes of the movie, I really liked. I was very into like the history behind it and his connections between like dictators throughout time and the immortality and how that connects, you know, dictators and vampires. And I thought that was very clever. And then it just started to, once it got into the rhythm of the rest of the narrative, that's when I lost a bit of interest and kind of fell off of the movie. So, yeah, one I'm mixed on too, I would say.
Yeah. But otherwise, that's really everything that we've seen here at the festival.
A few others. But
a few others in between, but for the most part, that's what we've seen. And we'll be all back here probably next year for the 51st, doing the same podcast and talking about, of course, different films. Well, unless, you know, they just want to rescreen all this stuff again, which would be fine with me because there's a lot of great films. But anyway,
Sophia and I won a third time.
Third time.
I wanted. I tried to go today.
Yeah.
Sophia, can you tell everyone where we can find you and all your work on the internet?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter /X at Sophia_Sim. You can find me on Letterboxd with the same handle, just no underscore. You can find my podcast, Oscar Wilde. See, I'm losing my voice. I've just been talking all weekend. You can find my podcast, Oscar Wilde, at Oscar Wilde Pod. We release episodes every Friday. I'll have another Telluride recap there, going through all the fall festivals. And then you can find all of my reviews from this festival and more to come later this season at AwardsWatch.
You can find me on X at Christina Birro, same on Instagram, and my podcast is Pop Culture Confidential, where I interview filmmakers and actors and you guys. So listen there, follow me wherever you get your podcasts.
Please go and listen and follow Christina's podcast. It's truly amazing, not just when we're all three on.
During the fall, there's going to be interviews pertaining to Telluride. They'll be coming.
So please listen to that, and yes, go read Sophia's work. Fantastic reviews for Saltburn and NYAD and Wildcat to come. Erik?
Yes?
Where can we find you?
Oh, yeah. You can find me on Twitter at awards_watch and AwardsWatch everywhere else without that underscore. And, of course, awardswatch.com. You did not get a newsletter this week because I'm a lazy hoe. But you might get one just randomly this week. So, yeah.
You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, Ryan McQuade 77. You can find all my work here at awardswatch.com. If you could, please go and listen to our other podcast, which is Director Watch. The latest episode this week will be Jay and myself talking about Enemy in our Denis Villeneuve movie series. So Eric's very excited about that because he's talking about his man, Jake Gyllenhaal. Yes, please do go and subscribe to the newsletter. You get it twice a week usually, if Eric's not being lazy. And what else? Oh, yes, like, review, and subscribe on iTunes and Spotify. Give us 5-star reviews. If you don't give us 5-star reviews, we're not going to read them. We're not going to talk about them. That's not nice. So just 5-star reviews, please, all around. Next week, we won't be here because we'll be at Toronto and we won't have time to record anything. But we will be back in 2 weeks to do a Toronto International Film Festival wrap-up, just like this. So thank you all so much for listening, and we'll see you all next time.